do that.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. I am Jeffrey Hunt from the College of Southern Maryland. So I am the Endowed Faculty of Innovation here at the college. I work with the Velocity Center. And tonight we also have Matt Martin with us, who is the Chief Financial Officer for ETC, who is our partner in this competition. So we'd like to welcome you all here this evening for our session that we're going to have about cost tracking. So I would like to welcome all of you and would also like to get started this evening by giving Matt Martin the opportunity to speak and go through his presentation. And then after he's finished his presentation, we're going to have an opportunity for questions and answers. So if you would please hold your questions and answers until the end or put them in the chat. We'll try to catch them if you put them in the chat as we go along, if there seems like there's an appropriate place to address those. Otherwise, we'll get those at the end. So,
all right, very good. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. My name is Matt Martin. As Jeff said, I'm the CFO for Energetics Technology Center. Energetics is a partner in this particular hackathon that we're going to talk about. I did a very brief PowerPoint presentation that I want to just walk through. And then what I was really hoping for was that people would have questions, and I love answering questions, and I'm happy to address any that come up when we get to the end. So if you don't mind, launch the presentation real quick.
Sure.
And we'll go from there. And this is being recorded, so we'll try and go through it all, even if there aren't many attendees. So we're talking about finance and budget tonight. That's me. And here's what the agenda is: a brief introduction. We're going to talk about the hackathon project and do a summary. We're going to talk about budget considerations. I pulled together a very quick sample budget so we could show you what a very simple and basic one looks like, provide some other tips, and then open it up for questions. I expect this whole thing to take 10 to 15 minutes. It's not long. Like I said, I really wanted to leave time available for questions. So who am I? I already introduced myself. I've been in public accounting, forensic accounting. I was a public company CFO. I've been a private company president, private company CFO I am currently. I also do some project management consulting, and I am a College of Southern Maryland adjunct professor in the accounting department. And I have 25 years of experience. So just a little brief background.
Screen share.
Oh, can people see this?
The screen share is not working.
They're not able to see it. Well, how about this? I'll continue to talk about it. Oh,
let me get that fixed.
I was going to say, I'll continue to talk from it, and then we can just attach the slides to the recording if you want.
Well, here, let's,
all right.
Wait, let's just hop here, and we can.
Here's what I found. If you go to view.
Yeah.
So here, let me see something.
Okay.
Escape.
Yeah.
Go to view. Reading view. All right. So can you share this screen?
So we should be able to share that. Share.
Yeah, hit that.
Yeah, there we go. That's what we need. Share.
All right, so here, excellent. All right, well, good. Well, I luckily I didn't talk through anything that needed a slide. So let's see. Enter. All right, so there's our agenda we just talked about. Here's me. Okay, so hackathon project summary. So the first thing that everybody should know is that participation in this whole effort is free. You can put together a team and whomever you want. Put together your idea. It doesn't cost you anything other than your time to pull together a pitch. And there's real money in this. This isn't a joke. We're literally going to pay out prize money, and there's a construction budget. So this is a great opportunity for the community to get involved. The task is to design an iconic installation that is something that engages the community. If you all have been to the Velocity Center at all, there's a sand and gravel lot out in front where you can't grow anything but weeds. It's a pretty big area. It's a bit of an eyesore. Our office building is here, and so part of the challenge's origin is because we really want to do something out there that makes that look nicer. And so it's wide open in terms of what you come up with, but we do want something that, you know, turns an eyesore into an icon. There's a $25,000 construction budget, and so we'll talk about that budget in a minute, but the idea is whatever concept you come up with can be constructed for $25,000 that ETC will pay. And then, like I said, there's real prize money. I believe it's $3,000 for the first place, $2,000 for second place, and $1,000 for third. So you don't even have to win, and you can still win some real money. So hopefully we get lots of people participating. So since tonight's about budget, I pressed the wrong thing. Sorry, y'all. Sorry. All right, you're back. Okay, good. So tonight's about budget. We want to talk about budget. So when you're pulling together your budget, you need to think of all the costs that you're going to have to incur to construct whatever it is that you come up with. So things that you want to think about are things like engineering and permitting. Whatever you're doing, does it require any kind of engineering? Does it require permitting? You know, materials. What kind of materials are you going to have to buy? What kind of materials can you have donated? All that stuff you need to figure out how much you need and where you're going to get them from. Is there going to be site work involved? Are you going to have any, you know, heavy equipment out there moving dirt around? Is there any structural work that needs to be done in order to build whatever it is your vision is? Labor, what kind of labor costs is it going to take to get your idea done? You know, obviously, I don't know what your idea is, but there may be other things that you've got to consider. And then I've been in the business long enough to know that it's always good to have a contingency. So you want to have those. So when you're thinking through, how do I figure out what those costs are? You know, engineering and permitting, you're going to need to go to the town of Indian Head as the jurisdiction for the land out there and determine what I'm trying to do. Does it require a permit? If you're building a permanent structure, I would venture to guess that it does require a permit. If you're building some kind of non-permanent structure, it may not require a permit. So again, not knowing what the idea is, it's hard to say whether or not that's required. But when you're talking with your teams and you're thinking about how to pull your budget together, you need to look at that and you need to consider that. Materials. So if you're trying to figure something out and you want to know, I'm trying to build something that's going to need 500 2x4s, right? Go online and price out 2x4s. Or if you have a stack of 2x4s in your backyard, you're willing to donate those, then great, right? So depending on where your materials are going to come from, depends on how you're going to consider them in your budget, but you need to consider them. Same thing with site work or structural work. If you have something that you want done, I know a bunch of firms out there that you call them up and tell them generally what you're trying to do, and they'll pull together a bid for you and figure out what it's going to take to do whatever it is you're asking them to do. Labor, another good one. You got to think about who you're paying, how much you're paying them, on what basis you're paying them. Obviously, for a community project like this, you could probably get some volunteer labor depending on what it is. So if you need cinder blocks moved around, and instead of hiring someone by the hour to do that, you get a team of volunteers to move them for you. That's all well and good, but your project needs to consider that. You need to think about where that other information is coming from and what the best way to estimate other is. And then, like I said, having a contingency is super important, and it's definitely helpful. So I've decided to put together, and this is a little hard to see, but I decided to put together a very just simple example of how to pull together a budget. And so in this particular example, all these numbers are made up. you know, if I see this budget submitted, I know you cheated, right? That none of it is right. But I just wanted to show you how I would put something together. And so if one of the ideas that we jokingly kick around is, you know, what if we built pickleball courts out in front of the building? So I just decided to you know, base my estimate off of what it would take to build something like that. So you know, a permit, and again, I didn't look this up, so I just said, oh, permit, we need one of those. They're, you know, the unit price on those is $15.25, so my total cost is $15.25. And then my basis of estimate is going to the Town of Indian Head website and figuring out what those permit fees are going to be. Got some concrete there, 500 bags at $6.89 a bag would be, you know, $3,445. And I got that from Lowe's.com. Again, I did not get it. I just made this up. You know, same thing. I need 30 gallons of paint, 26 bucks a gallon. That's actually probably low. I think paint's gotten pretty expensive here in the last couple of years, but nonetheless, made up. So that's $780, and I just listed Lowe's.com. I'm going to need fence, linear fence, 300 linear feet of fence at $31.89 per foot is $9,567. You know, I got that from Clinton Fence as a quote, for example. I'm going to need some nets, 3 nets at $450 each, $1,350 from a sports equipment wholesaler. I need to rent some equipment to move some dirt around. 3 days of equipment rental at $750 a day, $2,250. Sunbelt Rentals. I'm going to need to pay people, 6 people for a week each. It's 240 hours, 20 bucks an hour for $4,800. I've got some volunteer hours that I'm baking in at $0, but I want to make sure that when I put my budget together, I consider all of those things. So even if it's a 0 item, you want to consider it so that we can see that you really have everything that's necessary to execute your project. And then I've got one contingency at 5% of project budget, giving me a total of $25,000. And so something like that is really what you need to help show that you've gone item by item through, you've really thought about what each item costs, and that whoever's then reviewing your proposal can look at that and say, yeah, I really do think we can execute this particular project and this vision for the $25,000 budget that's been allocated. All right, so other tips for you all. First of all, and I've learned this over the years, you know, being the Lone Ranger doesn't really get you anywhere. Build your team with creative people that fill all of the skill sets. So, or with people that have all the requirements, so creative and administrative. So if you're an administrative type and, you know, you have the detail-oriented nature to really put this project across the finish line, you know, find yourself a nice creative person that can help come up with the vision for your project. And then, you know, vice versa. If you're a very creative person and, you know, you've got great vision, but, you know, execution and details aren't necessarily your strong suit, find people that complement you and pull your team together, because that's going to give you the best complete idea. Be detailed, be organized, but don't overcomplicate things. So if you notice, you know, I didn't have a ton of Excel macros. I didn't, you know, I didn't overcomplicate my budget. I thought of everything that I could. I listed it all out as detailed as I could, but I didn't overcomplicate it. I'd encourage you to do the same thing, especially, you know, if your own worksheet is very detailed and gets, you know, documents a lot of the information that you've gone and researched, and you've got, you know, an Excel, you know, spreadsheet with, you know, 500 cells filled in with all kinds of information. I'd encourage you to summarize that in a summary sheet that the reviewers of your project can look at, and at a very high level, you know, be able to both capture that you've thought about all the items, but not get overwhelmed in all the detail that you've pulled together. So detailed, organized, but try not to overcomplicate. As you're talking about stuff, make sure your idea is executable within budget and within a reasonable time frame. So if you've got something that's going to take 4 years to build, that's probably not going to win. If you've got something that takes 2 months to put together, that's much more realistic. There's no real requirement because it's a very open-ended request. So it's not to say that longer-term items are not allowed, but I can tell you the chance of success goes down the longer something is going to take. Make sure that whatever you're doing is sized and scaled appropriately. I'd encourage you to come to the site before you do too much of your visioning. But when you get to the site, you'll see it's a pretty big land area. So if you build a Matchbox car sized, art installation out there, it's going to drown in a sea of sand and gravel. So make sure that you're thinking in the terms of size and scale that really makes an iconic impact to the site out there. And then, brainstorm. Make sure that you explore all ideas before you select one to execute. And even as you're executing, remain open to the process. There's no such thing as a bad idea. There's some impossible ideas and some things you're going to have to cut loose, but be open to talking with your team about the art of the possible. All right. And then funny thing, I really enjoy this. I actually pulled this slide deck out of a canned PowerPoint presentation format. And this was one of the slides and I loved it. It says the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. And I really, I appreciate this, especially in this particular instance. Get your team, get talking about it, but then once you settle in on your idea, get doing with pulling together your presentation, pulling together your budgets, and really trying to wrap your arms around, how you're going to get this done for $25,000. It is not a small task. I am well aware that $25,000 doesn't go as far as it used to. So to do anything of any kind of scale out there is going to take some creativity. But that's part of what this challenge is about. So with that, those were my prepared remarks. I think I came in right around that 10-minute mark. I have included here my email and my cell phone number, as well as my company's website. Please feel free to reach out along the way with questions. I'm happy to help. I love answering questions, but I can't answer questions that aren't asked. So with that, we can stop sharing this, and I would be happy to take questions. So I think Tiana's on the line and Jeff is in the room. So either one of you have questions?
Are there any questions online? Of course, feel free to put them in the chat if you like. Okay, so I'll get us started with a question.
All right, cool.
So one thing you mentioned was having a contingency budget for those things that come up that you just can't foresee.
Yep.
So in a project like this, I saw in your fictional budget, you had 5%.
Yep.
Do you think that is 5% a reasonable number? Should that number be larger or smaller? Or do you think it really depends on the type of project you're going to do?
So it very much depends on the type of project. If you have a project that you're buying a lot of off-the-shelf things where pricing is firm and fixed and your quantities are known, you don't need a ton of contingency. If you have something that requires a longer time frame, lots of labor, you don't know how productive your labor is really going to be, something like that would at least need 5%, if not 10, if not 15. The problem with a budget this small is that even a 10% contingency is only $2,500 bucks. So it really comes down to how risky is this project, how hard is this project, and that's really should drive your contingency consideration.
Checking to see if there are any questions online. Feel free to unmute yourself and speak if you want, or put questions in the chat. Another thing that you were talking about was you were mentioning things like getting bids from outside companies or even going and getting prices on material like you did online, how many places should I be looking to go get prices on things to make sure I have a reasonably good chance of getting a good price, do you think? Should I get one? Should I get three? Should I go get 12? How many is too many?
No, so too many becomes just too much work. You can never really get too many prices, but what I have found is that when you're bidding a project, you don't necessarily need as many data points as when you execute a project. And so what do I mean by that? So if I go out and I find that Lowe's sells 2x4s, two by 4x8 for $3, and Home Depot sells 2x4x8s for $2.95. For the purposes of putting my budget together, I would use $3 because it's the higher of the two prices. When I go to execute, I'd want to get probably 3 bids and then select the lowest reasonable bid so that you're executing as efficiently as possible, but you're bidding as conservatively as possible. So to answer your question, if you're going to get like a quote for engineering services, for example, you're probably good with one, right? Because if one person will do it for $2,500, then that's a good number for your budget. But when it comes time to do it, you may want to interview your bidding firm and another firm or two to see if someone else will do it for $2,250 if you've won the work. But it's a lot easier to negotiate with people when you've got money in your pocket and you're going to do the project, as opposed to when you call them and say, hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to win or not. I just need a rough order of magnitude for what these services are going to be. It gets hard to get multiple folks to bid on that. So internet searches do a couple. If you're getting services bids, you could probably get away with 1 or 2 on your budget, but then when you actually execute and you get firm bids, you're probably going to want to get about 3.
Right, good information. So another thing that I think teams need to consider probably is the fact that this is not just putting something up and then it's going to be there and no one ever has to touch it or think about it or cut the grass or put mulch down or whatever it happens to be, depending on what it is, or paint it or things. So do you think that it would be a good idea for teams to maybe look at what is going to be the cost to maintain this over time? Do you think that that could be a good thing to include when they talk to the panel, to be able to say, over the course of so many years, we think this is the maintenance cost that's going to be involved?
Yeah, so you busted me. I meant to actually put that in my presentation. So yeah, the ongoing cost of maintenance is not something that your budget has to capture. Meaning, if you construct it for $25,000, you don't have to have some kind of a reserve to handle the ongoing maintenance of whatever you've put up for the next 15 or 20 years. That's not required. However, if you have a project that you put up for $25,000 and is going to require, $5,000 a year of ongoing maintenance to keep it in good shape, versus another project that goes up and requires no maintenance, that the one with no maintenance is going to win, right? Like you're gonna, we're going to want to lean heavy into those things that are self-sustainable and don't really require a lot of ongoing maintenance. So nothing is really self-sustainable, but there is no true perpetual motion device out there, right? So clearly there's going to need to be some level of ongoing commitment. We're okay with that, but consider those costs as you're pitching to make sure that you're managing those future risks in your presentation. But again, your $25,000 budget does not have to capture a reserve for those items. That will be something that we will do in the future to maintain it. So
okay. So any questions online?
I think I have a question. So you all basically covered everything that I was thinking about. I was wondering, you mentioned earlier about the few firms that you knew of. I was wondering if you would be able to forward the information of those firms that would be willing to give us an evaluation, or
And evaluate, oh, sorry, we got this thing in a loop. An evaluation of what? That's the hard
basically
part.
when we propose our ideas and what we were thinking about for the project, for the materials and everything.
So, sorry. We got some technical difficulties here. All right, so I don't, without knowing what it is you're trying to do, I don't know. There are plenty of architecture and engineering firms out there, and so if again, I don't think in a $25,000 budget you're going to be building anything of any kind of structural or architectural significance, because those fees would get eaten up in a hot minute. In terms of materials costs, your Lowe's, Home Depot sites of the world are going to serve you well. Specialty places are all out online. If you did have like a very specific engineering question, like I need a structural engineer for a blank, feel free to reach out to me, because I do know some people for that, but it's hard for me to answer that question by just giving you random folks without the context of what you're asking for.
Did that answer your question?
That makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, my contact information was in the presentation. And like I said, I actually really do enjoy answering questions. That to me is fun. And so if you have them along the way, give me a shout. I'm happy to help. But again, like, be creative, don't overcomplicate, but more than anything, consider all the costs and summarize them in a way that's easy for someone to digest. The sample sheet I gave you is very easy to follow. You're not required to use that, but it certainly is a very simple way to present a budget. So with that, I'm good if you're good.
Okay. There are no more questions online in the chat or anything at the moment. If there are any questions, please take the opportunity to ask them. Also, if you have questions about anything to do with the competition, you can always go look on the webpage for the event. My contact information is on there as well. You can always email me if you have questions about anything. I'll make sure that either I get them answered for you, or I send them to the appropriate place to get you an answer. But otherwise, I hope everybody is going to be working on their ideas, working hard on their budgets. Remember, if you're working with a group of people who are extremely creative, that a great way to make sure that your project is feasible, which is something that will be important, is take on someone to track those numbers. Take a business student, an accounting student in some cases, or someone who does that for their job on to help with those things. So, questions, comments, anything else? Okay, right. Hearing none, thank you so much for attending. Thank you for your time. I hope you all do well in the contest. Have a good evening.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy your night.
We're out.